Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, so I wanted to talk about a short story that has interested me, as picked out by my friend Bevan, because this is Bevan Week, a week where I talk about the books, the literature that Bevan has acknowledged as something she wants me to talk about. But really, this only applies to Short Story Tuesday and Poetry Thursday, because I can't seem to finish the book that she wants me to finish in time. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting short story collection that she's recommended to me. Today's short story is all about the internal need to roam. I am referring to Wandering Devil by Cadwell Turnbull, from the short story collection Out There Screaming, which was edited by Jordan Peele and published in 2023. For those who don't know, Cadwell Turnbull is a Black American writer. Most of the writers, or all of the writers in this short story collection, are Black writers, which is something that I have only ever done once before, and that was a science fiction collection that I read a while back, which you can also find on my Short Story Tuesday playlist, so be on the lookout for that. Cadwell Turnbull is a Black American writer, known for mostly writing short stories, but he has also written longer format novels, too. He frequently writes about socialist topics as well as race and ethnicity and those sorts of things. Very topical, I would say. And he's channeled his energy into science fiction and fantasy, and he's won or been nominated for a number of awards. This is the first time I've encountered Cadwell, but I am very interested in reading more of his writing down the road. And as for the editor, Jordan Peele, I have a feeling a lot of people know who he is, but some might not. He is a writer and a director. He got his start with Key and Peele, which was a sketch comedy TV show, which he was in charge of along with Keegan-Michael Key. I particularly loved that sketch comedy, but a lot of people might know him more for his directing career, where he directed Get Out, one of my favorite horror movies, Us, and Nope, which are also high quality horror movies. And he also has a pretty big production company that funds more horror. So pretty interesting editor there. But I think our focus today is on Cadwell Turnbull. So without further ado, let's talk about Wandering Devil. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So Wandering Devil focuses on a man named Freddy. He is a Black man who is kind of just wandering about the country, never staying in one place for too long. And this is partially due to the fact that his mother was a wanderer too. She ditched the family when she turned 30 and went to Hollywood, but Freddy never really found out what happened to her. And the same thing happened to his grandfather. Freddy doesn't really have anyone but his grandmother, as we see throughout the story. And so he just moves around quite a bit, having various girlfriends here and there before presumably breaking up with them. And then he finally moves to Pittsburgh, where he starts a life with a woman named Dyla, who's very interested in politics and is also interested in having children with him because they seem to be in love. Freddy, meanwhile, makes his ends meet as a dishwasher, and seems to have a good relationship with his coworkers. But he still feels that need to leave. But although Dyla says that she's willing to go with him, that they don't have to stay in one place. And while Freddy and Dyla are talking one day, she asks him to share a story about a train ride that he had once. And he tells a story about a guitarist who was playing at a train station. He gave money to this guitarist, and this man revealed that his name was Old Black Billy. And he told him that he would one day meet a woman in a mill town and have a great life together. But Freddy doesn't relay the whole story there. But Dyla points out that Pittsburgh used to be a mill town, so maybe he was correct and they can have a life together. But Freddy is still considering leaving, and he decides that at the end of the week he's just gonna move and head out and be done with his life with Dyla. But he's also having these weird hallucinations, or what seem like hallucinations, of something lurking in the shadows of his apartment trying to grab onto him. But whenever someone turns on the lights, there's nothing there. It's just a feeling deep down within him. And he also thinks more about the Black Billy story and how he didn't tell Dyla everything. In fact, when we learn that Black Billy, when Freddy looked into his eyes, he saw only black pits, suggesting that he might have been some sort of demon or the devil. And that he also told Freddy that either he'll end up with this woman in this mill town, or he'll fall through the earth, or he'll go someplace he could have never imagined, kind of indicating he might go to hell, and that old Black Billy might again be the devil, which Freddy didn't tell anyone about and tried to get away as soon as possible. But he's still set on leaving. He tells his boss, and his boss throws a massive farewell party. But unfortunately, some of his coworkers tell Dyla, who they think that she's in or understanding of this entire thing. And she shows up to the farewell party. Freddy feels really guilty about it, but they don't really say anything to one another. And they just have the party, and Freddy relays some stories that he wanted to tell. After Freddy drops off Dyla, he promises that he'll come back and say his goodbyes to her. But he heads back to his apartment and considers just ditching Dyla at that point. But as the story comes to a close, he once again sees the weird shadowy spider creature in his apartment, and it seemingly sucks him down into a swampy sulfur type area, which I can only presume is hell, and that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, what a fascinating short story. Definitely one of the more interesting short stories that I've read recently, and it's a high quality horror short story that leaves you with plenty to think about. So one of the themes that Turnbull is working with here is the need to roam. This is kind of the central idea of the story. Freddy is unable to stay in one place, like his mother and his grandfather. And there's a couple of reasons that might be offered for why that might be the case for Turnbull, or for Freddy. Because there's a seemingly there's a reason that he wants to roam, and we all have that desire, but a lot of us have an instinct to stay as well. Whereas Freddy just seems to want to constantly go. It does seem to be a bit genetic. He might argue that there was something within his mom, and it's also within him, and it just prevents him from settling down in any one location. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. Dyla was different. Dyla was different, and he did love her. But he thought of his mother at 30, a life and a child she didn't want. The terrible note, not even a word for her son. He knew the same thing that was in her was in him, knew it so bone deep he had never found it in himself to hate her. But he wanted to be better than she was. Only the truly evil would build a life they knew they would abandon. Which is a very interesting kind of quote, kind of indicating that there's some of Freddy's mom in him, and that's why he wants to roam, how he can't seem to stay in one location. And because of this, a lot of us would be angry at our parents for leaving, but Freddy can't really blame her because it's something within him. It's something that couldn't really be controlled. And in that way, it could also be a mental health sort of thing. All of this is in Freddy's head. There's a sense of depression or estrangement from life, and he doesn't really have a connection to anything, and so it might have been something his mom dealt with, and so he can't really stay in one place because he doesn't feel tethered to this world. But it could also just be an indicator of no roots. His grandfather and his mother aren't around, and it seems like his grandmother isn't around either, so he has nothing to keep him in one place. It's more of a physical thing than with the mental health sort of thing. And that could be a commentary on race, where many white people have foundations in this country, but a lot of black individuals were taken from Africa or other locations and forced to be slaves in a place they weren't familiar with, and so they feel they have no grounding in this country. That does feel like an explanation that would make sense for this book, given that this entire collection is full of black writers, and that's something that many black writers have written before. So I don't feel that argument is too far out of place. But I do think there's a couple of other explanations that there could be as well. And Turnbull argues that this is a forsaken life. Like, it's very clear that this is not a life that's worth living, that that something is wrong with Freddy, physically and mentally, and it's leading him to have a very sad life. Like, even he acknowledges that it's probably wrong to leave Dyla, but he just can't help himself. Another interesting aspect of the story is that of the emotion of guilt. Freddy gets caught in his lie with Dyla. It's something that I feel like many people, including me, have experienced, where we lie to someone and then we get caught in that lie, saying, oh, I can't do X, Y, or Z, I have other things to do. And then you go out and that person sees you and you're like, I kind of lied, but I don't want to acknowledge the lie. There's an unspoken pain between Dyla and Freddy in this story, where she doesn't want to call him out in front of his coworkers, but it's there. She says it with her eyes, like, we'll talk about this later, because I thought we loved each other. I thought this was meant to be, and here you are getting ready to ditch me without even telling me that that it's over. It's kind of a big sense of disrespect and broken heart there. And Dyla wants to be supportive. She's like, we can go anywhere you want. Like, we can leave, we can go find something else. But as long as I can work at my job in Pittsburgh. And in a way, Freddy understands that, but it's also a sense of he needs to roam. And part of the roaming is the never coming back. And so it seems like Dyla wants to come back and have roots somewhere, whereas Freddy doesn't want that. He wants to keep moving and going until he eventually dies. And so there's that guilt that Freddy, like, he doesn't want to waste Dyla's time, which is very understandable. Like, if you know this relationship isn't going to work out, you might as well, not let it go any further, no matter how much you seemingly love each other now, because the future commitments, you're not going to be able to meet, and it's going to feel like you just wasted a couple of years of your life. And I think in another way, the monster kind of represents the guilt in this story. Like, I think the pain of leaving Dyla and the pain of roaming your entire life and never having those roots kind of manifest itself in the form of this weird spider monster that sucks him down into hell at the end of the story. The monster is very real, I think, in a physical sense, but it's also the underlying emotions that Freddy is dealing with, that he's living in his own personal hell by never staying in one place and giving up this great love that he could have had, which adds a little bit of more of a sad layer to the story. And I do think the story is pretty good, but the Black Billy elements are unnecessary. I feel like you could have done more with that, because where it stands right now, it just seems like Black Billy doesn't really have a part to play. And in fact, it feels kind of vague what happened to Freddy at all. Like, does he get sucked down into hell? Is this more of a mental experience for him? And why is he getting sucked down to hell? It doesn't seem like he made any deals with Black Billy. Black Billy was just, prophesizing about his life. And usually a character needs to do something truly awful in terms of deserving getting sent to hell. And I don't think leaving Dyla is enough for that. That's Freddy is being punished emotionally and psychologically for that. He doesn't need a physical punishment there. But I don't know. I think that's just me kind of picking apart it. But I do think Cadwell could have done a little bit more to either expand that kind of element of the story or shrink it down so as to not have it kind of derail parts of the story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Wandering Devil by Cadwell Turnbull, which is a pretty solid short story. If you're looking for some exciting horror, you can't go wrong with this short story or any other short story in this collection. There's a number of high quality short stories here, all focusing on some element of black horror, which is a genre that isn't fully explored to its best extent. There's always more that can be mined in that area. So yeah, definitely recommend it to you out there. If you have any thoughts about it or you want to comment on my review here, do so below. Would love to hear from you. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this author or this book, or more about Jordan Peele if they're a big fan or don't know too much about him. Feel like it's a good introduction to his mindset. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and wandering travels. Farewell.